Hey guys, I just want to see. Okay, that looks fine. And sorry, as you know, raw and real. So apologies for the dog jumping on the bed, etc. I feel so strongly about something I just watched this morning. I do a lot of YouTube, and I just watched the story of JUDY Malinowski. I'd kind of seen the story yonks ago, but never really remembered it. And this morning it was in my feed, and I immediately watched it. And it was incredible in every way you can imagine. Horrific, amazing, inspiring, tragic. Just no words can actually describe. Okay, dog, thanks for bouncing all over. And it was so moving to me, and I just wanted to share some thoughts because it really touched me in so many ways. This lady, you can go and Google it. Had a history. She had a troubled life after she'd had surgery for cancer at the age of 27, and she'd ended up addicted to painkillers, which she was struggling to overcome. And then she ended up meeting and hooking up with a guy named Mike Slager. And, you know, when you see the pictures of Mike, and there's so many components to this, so I hope you'll stick with me because I've got a lot that I want to share. But you could see just, you know, the whole don't judge a book by its cover, right? But you look at Mike and he looks like a troubled individual. He's covered in tattoos. He just has that funny, rebellious punk type look about him. No offense to any people covered in tattoos, but you know, the whole adage of a lot of the time how we look on the outside is a reflection of what's going on the inside of us. And it's not to point fingers or belittle or criticize, but to, and this today, what I'm sharing is all about trying to just encourage. And I mean everybody, because wow, we all need it. So he's got a troubled past. He's got a long criminal history and a record of all kinds of very red flag kind of behavior. Needless to say, for some bizarre reason, she's attracted to him, which often is the case. She's vulnerable. She's impressionable. He does or gets potentially her hooked back on drugs. The point is they don't have a good relationship, and it's reached a point where they're having a massive argument one day, and there's CCTV footage of them pulling into a car park where the argument escalates, and not long after, she walks away from him to the back of this gas station where they are, and he drives around with his truck, pulls out a gas canister, douses her in gasoline, and sets her on fire. I mean, it's horrific, and it's on CCTV footage. And needless to say, she's covered with, I think, 85 to 90% burns all over her body, which as a paramedic, I know that's not survivable. I mean, even 30-40% is a really high risk for passing away. This brave young woman goes on to literally fight for her life and endure something stupid like 60 surgeries over a 700-day period. Initially, Mike is charged with aggravated assault or whatever the charges are in America, and he gets a sentence of 11 years, which in itself is appalling. You've just ruined somebody's life. You've put them through the most unimaginable, excruciating, disgusting kind of suffering, permanent disfigurement, etc., etc. And you get 11 years for that, really, really. So what comes out of all of this is something called Judy's Law. I mean, you can go Google all of this. Judy's Law is about making sure people who perpetrate these kind of crimes will get a decent sentence, if that can be even a thing. What is a decent sentence when you've ruined somebody's life permanently? But a lot of what I'm saying and sharing this morning is all tying back to the previous video that I've done on forgiveness and the kind of huge topic that forgiveness really is, right? So in the course of the 700 days that, you know, she's fighting so hard for her life, she's in excruciating agony. I mean, you see the video footage of her. It is horrifying to imagine what this poor woman has gone through. And one of the striking things as well throughout is that Mike shows no remorse. He's not even sorry. He just looks like he couldn't care less, like, ugh, whatever. You can only imagine the kind of things the family are dealing with, the anger, the hatred, the unforgiveness, the bitterness on all of these things, which many people would turn around and say is fully justified. So it becomes apparent after, you know, a fair amount of time that Judy's probably not going to survive. You can see that her body's weakening and she's really struggling. And her prosecution team turn around and decide, well, you know what? On top of, they're going to start fighting for a thing which they call Judy's Law, and it's now passed. Judy's Law has entered into law in America, and the sentence has been lifted for people like Mike who do this. There's so many people out there that think they've got to do this to another human being. But I'm going somewhere with this, so please stick with me, because I want us to really stop and think. It's very easy to get emotionally tied into something and to get very passionate and very, from whichever side of wherever, whatever. But it's important that we stop and think. As I always say, stop and think. So, okay, aside from the Judy's law passing, they realize that Judy is probably dying, and they decide to do a testify against him for when she dies, like a murder trial, but prematurely, so that after she passes away, they will have the footage of her recorded statement and testimony, and this is what happens. And eventually she does die. So when she dies, they now change the charges to murder. And again, he comes into court and he doesn't even look that concerned or that remorseful. One, of course, can't judge what's going on inside the man, but certainly from the outside, he just looks so indifferent and like couldn't care less. So they go through the court case and they show the footage of her testifying, with both sides being able to question, obviously. And this has all happened before her death. And at the end of it, long story short, he gets convicted of murder. But what was so incredible to me, and what prompted me to want to just jump on and do this story right now, okay, is like, she says in her testimony, they ask her the question at the end, and it was a 3-hour grueling interrogation. And to make it worse, she even had to come off all her meds and her painkillers in particular, so that she would be in the right mind, and, it would be all as above board and legal, the legal requirements and all that. She says at the end, the guy asks, what do you think should happen, if he's convicted of your murder, basically? And she says, oh, what do you think, is he, I can't remember how he says it, but basically she says he should be charged with murder and he should be given life in prison. Now, he was eligible for the death sentence in that state, should he have been found guilty of murder. But it was quite poignant, I felt, that she actually said life in prison. She didn't say, I want him to receive the death penalty. And so that's actually what transpired. He did get convicted, he did get life, and that's that. And it shows a couple of things of him leaving the court and, pictures of him and stuff like that. And it just stirred so many things in me. And I was like, wow, I really want to share and I really want to talk about this, because firstly, no one can in their right mind ever excuse or find any reasonable, acceptable reason for why he did what he did. That is just, there's no words for it. It is off the charts. But you know what goes through my mind? Judy died, and she actually said that when he set her on fire, she said she prayed to Jesus and she said, please forgive my sins. Because she knew in that instant she was in mortal danger and that she was potentially about to die. It did take a lot longer, but she knew, her spirit just knew, I need to be in right standing with the Lord if I die. Now, she has finally passed on and gone to be with the Lord, I believe. I also believe that her statement at the end of her deposition shows that she did not harbor unforgiveness and hatred in her heart. I think she had processed and had the time to work through all of that with the Lord while she was lying there in those excruciating, conditions or situation that she was in. At the end of the day, Mike gets the time to sit in jail for the rest of his life. And can I tell you what? Here comes the kicker. There's every chance that if he genuinely spends time introspecting and reflecting and coming to that place where he finally acknowledges and understands the wrong, the evil, the sinful, disgusting, whatever of what he did, the Lord can forgive him. That's the whole point of what Jesus did. Jesus came to do the impossible, right? He came to set us free from these kinds of things that have their tentacles in us, that we just can't control, that we can't, it's not that we can't control, but things happen in our lives. We make choices and decisions that lead us down very stupid and very evil and dark paths, right? The only one who can fix that in any kind of way, well, not even any kind of way, in a complete way, is Jesus. He's the one who paid for everything. He paid the price for everything. So there's every chance that Mike, having given a life sentence on death row, can now find forgiveness and end up in heaven. Many people will say, what a scumbag, burn in hell forever. That's unforgiveness, and it's as deadly as the sin that he committed. Because the Lord clearly says to us, do not harbor unforgiveness in your heart. Because if you refuse to forgive, you will not be forgiven. You've been given the gift. You've been offered the gift. I mean, this is such a powerful, incredible, whoa. I mean, it doesn't get worse than this, right? Torturing someone and doing this to them and then they die. I mean, it just doesn't get worse than that. There's nothing worse on this earth than murder, in my opinion. And yet the Lord sees sin equally. You know, he sees sin as sin. But Jesus paid the price, no matter what that thing is. No matter what that thing is. No matter how bad it is. There is that possibility that if you're truly sorry and you truly repent and turn to the Lord, doesn't mean you don't face consequences. I mean, he's still in jail and he's going to stay there. And he deserves to. But it's also about what happens in eternity. So it also got me thinking, you know, what is it that causes somebody to become a Michael Slager? What is it? How do you go? I mean, if you think about it, right? And I always love to think about these things and ponder life in general. You get born. We're all born, right? We're all born into a certain circumstance, to certain people that we cannot control. We have no control over who we are, where we get born, what culture we're born into, what language we're going to speak, what skin color we're going to have, what hair. And yeah, I mean, look at me. I was so passionate about doing this video this morning. I haven't even washed my hair. And, you know, we have no choice over those sorts of things. Then we may grow up in a really bad kind of situation, in a lot of poverty, a lot of lack, a lot of violence, a lot of, oh, who knows? I mean, you know, some circumstances out there are pretty challenging and pretty horrific. We all grow up and we make choices along the way. We have decisions to make. And life molds and shapes us, as they say. And we take life's knocks, as we say, all these old cliches, right? But we have choices to make. We get to a point where we have to say, I'm choosing to do this, or I'm choosing to do that, or I'm refusing to do this, or I'm refusing to do that. And sometimes in the heat of the moment, we may choose to do something. You know, we may not necessarily be so inherently bad or evil, but we may choose things in the spur of the moment with the emotions running high, and that later we live to regret, because sometimes they're permanent, they can't be reversed. So I know this might all sound pretty heavy. And, you know, life is tough, people. Life is tough. Oh, thanks, dog, for some more bouncing. Life is really harsh out there. All you have to do is watch the news any given day, and you can see what we're all facing and dealing with. Some to lesser degrees than others, and some seem to be having the lovely life, you know, wee-hoo, we've got tons of money and life is lovely and we carry on as normal. But at the end of the day, we're all human. We all go through stuff, we all face stuff, and we all make decisions and choices. And I just want to encourage, if anybody out there ever comes across this video and you're struggling, or even anyone's had things happen to them and you're struggling because you can't forgive, you can't let go, you're so angry, you're so hurt, but by the same token, things have happened to you to make bad choices and decisions and do pretty evil and despicable things. There's always, always, always hope. And I mean always. There is never a time when there's no hope. Jesus did it all. He paid the price. The end. I'm not even going to expand on that. So I want to just encourage, and I just want to extend this message as a token of hope and love and encouragement to anybody out there who's ever had any stuff that they've had to forgive or overcome. Horrible, terrible things have been done to you by people that you wish to see burn in hell. Let me tell you, people, we don't even understand or conceive of this thing called hell. So many would even argue and say it doesn't even exist, and they would disagree and whatever. You know what? I'm not interested in having debates. I come and I share what's in my heart from the perspective that I walk in and from the things that I believe, which come from the Bible, life experiences, and other things that have happened to me. But I do know that humans are humans, and we have such capacity for love, goodness, kindness, care, hope, forgiveness. And if you've struggled and lost your way in that, it's not too late. When you're dead, and that's a whole different ballgame. So please, guys, take the time, stop and think. And just a huge big hug and a big message of encouragement and hope to anybody out there who may have gone through something similar to Judy, but maybe not to the point of losing their lives. You know, maybe you've been disfigured or suffered and gone through years and years of abuse, spousal abuse, etc. These are heavy topics, but in the midst of it all, I just want to encourage that there's always hope. There's always somebody out there who will help, who will listen, who will stick out a hand and say, hey, here's my hand, take it. You know, these non-editing things, here's my hands. Take it, you're not alone. I'm willing to listen, and I care, etc. And the one above all who cares the most is the Lord. I mean, he loves us more than we'll ever understand in this lifetime. He loves us for the fact of love itself. He loves us despite what we've done, despite how we are and how we act and how we think. And it's not an excuse to say, oh, well, God loves me so I can be a complete raging pig. No, you can't be a complete raging pig. A tiny effort at humor after this heavy one. But I just want to say, stop and think. And you know what? There's hope. And the one who gives it to you is the Lord himself. So anyway, that's it for now, as we don't want to ramble on and on and on. And I'll catch you for the next one.